Hello everyone, it's me Harry, and today is day 3 of my Mediavent Calendar. And in this installment, we're going to be taking a look at games developed by the Japanese company Taito. I'm quite familiar with this company, mainly for their Buster Move and Bubble Bubble series, but they have done other arcade games as well, most famously Space Invaders. Although some of the games that they do have are quite obscure, but aside from that, I'll show you what I own. So we'll start off with Buster Move 2 Arcade Edition on the Sega Saturn, released in 1996 by Acclaim Entertainment, who used to publish Taito's games outside Japan and Asia. So, Buster Move 2 was a popular PlayStation title, but the Saturn version is actually based on Buster Move 2X, the enhanced version of the original game, which did have a PlayStation release, but it was only released in Japan. So, the Sega Saturn and MS-DOS versions of the game that were released outside Japan are based on 2X, and as such, there's some different levels, and it markets on the back that there's a level editor where you can make your own levels. Although you can only save them to the Saturn's internal storage. You can't save them on the save data cartridge, as the game doesn't support it. And here's the back. And of course, it's long because it's a Sega Saturn game. They always came in really big plastic cardboard hybrid packaging. Here's the manual. Explains to you what the game's like in different languages. And in the back has an ad for Frank Thomas Big Hurt Baseball, which is one of the early incarnations of Acclaim's All-Star Baseball series. Next up is Buster Move 3 DX for the PlayStation. This is the enhanced version of the original Buster Move 3, which was released for the arcade and the Sega Saturn. This came out in 1998, also by Acclaim Entertainment. And it was released in the United States as Buster Move 99. And there was also a separate Nintendo 64 version as well. Same with Buster Move 2. So here is the disc, and here's the manual. I've had this game for quite a long time, actually. And the back has an ad for the game Forsaken, which is kind of strange for a kid-friendly game to be advertising a game that was rated M for mature in the United States. I don't know why, but there you go. And then here is Buster Move 4 for the Dreamcast. This is a slightly enhanced graphic version of the PlayStation and arcade versions of the game. So this came out in 2000, but the original Buster Move 4 came out in 1998, I believe. So, unlike the other versions, as I said, this is pretty much just the faithful port of the original Buster Move 4. It's got everything included with it. And it was a nice kid-friendly game for the... family-friendly game for the Dreamcast. The disc is actually very similar to the PlayStation version's disc as well, which is funny. And then here's the manual. Just nothing on the back. It's Acclaim games don't normally advertise the games on the back. Just Dreamcast packaging. And then inside is a little Acclaim leaflet. Dead or Alive 2. South Park Rally. Spirit of Speed 1937. Fur Fighters. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX, ECW Anarchy Rules, ATV Quad Power Racing, Vanishing Point, RC Revenge, Ferrari F355 Challenge, Tarek Free Shadow of Oblivion, HBO Boxing, Jeremy McGrath Supercross 2000, and of course this game, which uses the artwork from the US cover art for some reason. Whilst as I said, what we got here is the same artwork that the other European versions have. And also released in 2000 was one of Taito's first PlayStation 2 titles, Super Buster Move. And yep, it's another game from Acclaim. And it's rather infamous for this awful cover art of a baby wearing sunglasses and blowing a Buster Move bubble. It doesn't have any connection to the game at all, aside from the gameplay on there. So I don't know what Acclaim were thinking by having artwork like this. Here's the back. I think this is the only PlayStation 2 title where the rating's not on the front of the packaging. It's on the back. But it's still the same Buster Move action that you've always been familiar with. Here's the disc. There's actually 2 different takes on the disc. This is one of them. The other one is just the artwork of the baby. So, of course, they had to put it in 3 times. And the back has an ad for Acclaim's RC Revenge Pro, which is the enhanced port of RC Revenge for the PlayStation, which you already saw in that Acclaim leaflet. So by that point, Taito had stopped publishing their games through Acclaim, but even then in the 90s, they were still publishing games through other companies like JVC and Eon Digital Entertainment. So by 2002, they started publishing their Buster Move games through Ubisoft. And as such, here is Super Buster Move 2. The sequel to the original with a story mode and the same cast as the original Super Buster Move. And this, as I said, was released in 2002. It's pretty much, as I said, just the first game with newer levels and a story mode. The story mode has very, very bad voice acting. And I mean really bad voice acting. Nobody really tried. A nice bright yellow disc this time. Here's the manual. Nothing on the back, just artwork of Bub. And there's a little product registration card for Ubisoft. It's got their newer logo on it. And the games advertised on this are Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, XIII, I think that's 8 or something, I don't know. Or 13, I don't know what that number is in Roman. Rayman 3, Hoodlum Havoc, and Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. So basically Ubisoft's highly anticipated titles of 2003. And yet, although it had the newer logo on there, it still spelt Ubisoft as 2 words, like what they used to be called. Here is Super Buster Move All Stars, released in September of 2003. So it uses the same artwork as Super Buster Move 2, but this is an enhanced port of the original game with a 4-player mode and different backgrounds and whatnot. And then on there's the main character, Mog, and she's miscoloured for some reason. I don't know why, but it's pretty hilarious looking at that. There we are. Here's the manual and the disc. A fairly pinkish disc. And the back of the manual and the front are pretty much the same as Super Buster Move 2. There's very little difference. Now, since we finished with Buster Move, let's go over to the other 3 games I have. So here is Space Invaders Invasion Day, which is known as Space Raiders everywhere else, but obviously they changed the name of the game in Europe, or more specifically the UK, because of trademark issues with the brand Space Raiders, which is, a brand of crisps. So they had to change it. So this is developed, by Taito and published by Sammy Europe. So, yep. The Sammy Corporation actually did have a short-lived European division that published certain games, but it didn't last long because Sammy merged with Sega and became Sega Sammy Holdings, and Sammy stopped publishing video games after that and focused on pachinko instead. So, yeah. But it's basically edgelord Space Invaders. It was a dark and gritty game. And even back then, there was a lot of media trying too hard to be edgy and whatnot. And this game is one of the best examples. It's just doesn't fit. And there's pretty much no point in this game even existing. It was released on the GameCube as well, but not in Europe. I don't think the Sammy Corporation supported the GameCube. And over there, the PS2 version didn't come out. It was published over there by a company called Mastiff, who were a budget company. So they must have got it for cheap from Taito, and then they sold it at a budget price of $19.99. And then it got poor reviews, so yeah. That's all I really have to say about that. And now, here is Space Invaders Anniversary. So, this is a compilation of different Space Invaders titles. I think this game only came out in Europe. And it was published by Empire Interactive, who later went on to do the Taito Legends series for Taito. This came out in 2004. So, yep, it's got different versions of Space Invaders, as you'd expect. They can't call it Space Invaders Anniversary for nothing. And it's sort of like a big tribute to one of the most best-selling arcade games of all time. So, here's the manual. And then the back has some arcade cabinets. And then the other thing that's inside is a Empire Interactive registration card. Obviously, the company doesn't exist anymore, so this registration card's useless. But it's a good little collectible anyway, if you could really call it one. And then last but not least is the title I had just mentioned. And now, here it is. Taito Legends 2. Yep, I have this, but I do not have the original Taito Legends. I'm still trying to find that one. So, the interesting thing about this game, which came out in 2006, also published by Empire Interactive, was that the PlayStation 2 and Xbox versions actually had a slightly different game selection because of porting issues that Empire Interactive had stated. And personally, I'd say the Xbox version and the PC version as well, because they both share the same game contents, actually have a better game selection, because this, until recently, was the only home port of Bubble Symphony, one of the sequels to Bubble Bubble. And it also has a port of Pop and Pop as well, and a few other games, but the PlayStation 2 version doesn't have those 4 games, replaced with a different selection. Yeah, Bubble Memories, the 4th game in the series, didn't even have a overseas release. Its only home port was on the PlayStation 2 in one of the Taito Memories volumes that was only sold in Japan. So, this was a multi-language packaging, so it lists down English, German, French, and Spanish information. So this reversed to Virgin Play, which was a Spanish distributor of video games. The logo doesn't appear on it, but they did distribute Empire Interactive's titles in Spain, and a couple of other publishers like Take-Two Interactive and I believe Midway Games and D3 Publisher. And even then, the Xbox version of this is quite hard to find. I don't think many of these were made in... I don't think it was made in many quantities. I actually got this quite cheap on eBay by a seller who accidentally mislabeled it as the PS2 version. But the seller was nice, and I got it for a fraction of what the price would normally go for it. So yeah, I'm quite glad to own this. Very good compilation. And then that's the end of this video. So see you next time for day 4. Bye-bye, everyone.